Hello, Jennifer here. I wrote this story for anyone who ever had to choose peace over people pleasing. It's about respect, backbone, and a really satisfying payoff. Let's dive in.
You don't live here anymore, my in-laws told my 12-year-old daughter, then made her pack her things while my sister-in-law moved into our $473,000 condo. When my husband found out, he didn't shout. He only smiled and said, "The house is actually—" They instantly went pale. I was standing in the break room at work, peeling the lid off a yogurt and checking a spreadsheet on my phone when my daughter Zoe called me in the middle of my workday. She had the day off from school and almost never called unless something was wrong, so I answered with, "Hey baby, what's up?" But the sound that came back was so wrong that my hand stopped moving. Her voice was flat and thin, like she was trying very hard not to cry and had gone past the point of knowing how. "Mom," she said, "what's going on?" I laughed once, confused, and said, "What do you mean?" There was a scrape on her end, like she had moved a bag or a chair. Then she said, in this careful little voice that made my stomach drop, "We're moving." For 1 second, the whole room around me got quiet in the strangest way. The vending machine was humming, somebody was talking in the hallway, my yogurt was open in my hand, and none of it fit with what my daughter had just said. I didn't ask who told her that because I already knew this was not a misunderstanding. Something impossible was happening in my home. That was the exact moment my day broke in half. I walked out of the break room without even realizing I had left my lunch on the counter, and I put my free hand flat against the wall so I could think. "Zoe," I said, "slow down and tell me exactly what's happening." She took a shaky breath and started giving it to me in pieces. My mother-in-law, Sharon, had told her, "Pack your things. You don't live here anymore. The condo is going to your Aunt Chelsea now because she needs it more." Chelsea was already there with boxes, and my father-in-law Gary was there too. Sharon and Chelsea said Zoe needed to pack up her room that day, and Sharon told her to be done before dinner so Chelsea could start getting the room ready for her boys. I asked, "Did they say your dad and I agreed to this?" Zoe went quiet for a second, which told me enough. When I asked how they had gotten inside, she said, "I let them in. I thought you and Dad knew." That part hit harder than anything. My daughter was not yelling. She was not fighting. She was trying to cooperate because 3 adults were acting like her life had been changed, and she was the only one who hadn't gotten the memo. When I asked if she had actually packed anything, she whispered, "A little." My 12-year-old had started clearing out her own room because adults told her to. That was the moment disbelief turned into rage. I was already moving toward the elevator when I said her name in the clearest voice I could manage. "Zoe, listen to me. We are not moving. You are not in trouble. This is not your fault." I heard her breathing change, fast and uneven. "Put everything down," I told her. "Go to your room, close the door, and stay there. You do not argue with Grandma. You do not answer questions. You wait for me and Dad." She was quiet long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then she asked, very small, "Is it still our house?" That question almost took the air out of me. "Yes," I said immediately. "It is still our house. It is still your room. Nobody is taking anything from you." The elevator took too long, so I hit the stairs and started down in heels I regretted instantly. She said, "Okay," but she didn't sound okay. I told her to lock herself in if she felt scared, then remembered our interior doors didn't lock and hated that fact with a fresh intensity. "Just stay in your room," I said. "I'm coming right now." By the time I ended the call, I was halfway down the stairwell and no longer walking. My husband, David, picked up on the second ring, and I didn't waste a second on setup. "Your parents are in our condo," I said. Chelsea is there with boxes, and they told Zoe to pack her things because Chelsea is moving in." He didn't speak for half a beat, and then I heard his office chair slam backward. "They said what to Zoe?" he asked. His voice had gone low when he was truly angry. I told him everything she had said, fast. By the time I got to, "She already started packing because she thought we had decided this." He cursed so hard I pulled the phone away from my ear. David had spent years cleaning up Chelsea's messes, sending money, taking extra calls, and telling himself there was a difference between helping family and being used. But they had pulled our daughter into it. They had made her afraid in her own bedroom. "I'm leaving now," he said. "I'll meet you there." I asked if he wanted me to wait for him, and he answered so fast it almost overlapped my question. "No, get to Zoe." Then he added, colder, "If they made her cry, this is done." I hit the lobby doors running. For the first time in years, I knew his family had crossed a line even he could not explain away. When I pulled into our condo lot, David's car was already there, crooked across one space like he had parked and gotten out before the engine settled. A borrowed moving truck sat near the entrance, back door open. 2 plastic storage bins were on the sidewalk. A rolled rug leaned against the building. Chelsea was standing in the middle of it all in maternity leggings and a long beige cardigan, one hand on her lower back, pointing with the other like a foreman. She wasn't carrying a single thing. Gary was lifting a box from the truck, while one of Chelsea's friends hovered nearby with a lamp and a laundry basket. The kids weren't there, which somehow made it worse. This had been planned. This had been arranged. This was not some lunch argument that got out of hand. David was already halfway to the walkway when I got out of my car. Chelsea looked at me once, then looked away like I was the one making it awkward. "What are you doing?" I asked her. She shifted her weight, adjusted her purse strap, and said, "Ask Mom." Not "I'm sorry," not "we need to talk." Just that slick little dodge, like the theft had been authorized somewhere above her pay grade. They had not come to discuss anything. They had come to install her. Sharon stepped forward before David could get another word out, and the look on her face was the one she always wore when she had decided something should be obvious to everyone else. "Lauren, don't make this ugly," she said. "Chelsea needs the condo more than you do." David laughed once, with no humor in it at all. Sharon kept going like she hadn't heard him. Chelsea was pregnant with her 4th child. The children needed room. They were bursting at the seams in their cramped townhouse, and Sharon kept insisting our condo made more sense for a bigger family. Meanwhile, David and I had one daughter and all this space. Gary set the box down and said, "You two can manage somewhere smaller for a while. It makes sense." Makes sense. That was the phrase they chose while standing in front of my home with Chelsea's lamp on my sidewalk and my daughter upstairs thinking she might be getting thrown out. I said, "You told a 12-year-old to pack her room." Sharon gave me this offended look, like I was focusing on tone instead of the practical matter. "She needed to start getting used to the change," she said. Chelsea folded her arms and added, "I'm due in a few months, Lauren. I can't keep living cramped like this." To them, this was not trespassing. It was redistribution. It was family logistics with better furniture. I didn't wait for the next lie. David was still facing them, shoulders squared, jaw tight, but I went past everyone and into the condo because Zoe mattered more than the argument outside. The front door was open. One of Chelsea's boxes sat in our entryway beside my shoe bench, and that image alone made me feel cold. Zoe's bedroom door was half shut. When I pushed it open, she was on the floor beside her bed with a duffel bag open and folded clothes stacked by her knees. Her backpack was on the chair. Her favorite gray hoodie was halfway inside a trash bag. She looked up at me with that brave, wrecked face kids get when they've been holding it together too long. "Mom," she said, standing so fast she knocked over the bag. I dropped to the floor and held her. "You stop packing right now," I told her. "Nobody is taking your room. Nobody is taking this home." She pulled back to ask, "Did I do something?" That hurt more than Sharon yelling. "No," I said. "You did nothing wrong." I moved the bags aside, sat her on the bed, and told her to stay there while we handled it. I just didn't know yet that one calm sentence from David was about to wipe the confidence right off Chelsea's face. The strangest part of all of this is that if you had met David before you met his family, you would have assumed he came from something steady. I did. We worked in the same office building years ago, on different floors, and for months he was just the man I kept seeing at the coffee cart downstairs around 10:30. He was always put together, always on time, always carrying too much for somebody else without making a show of it. We started with accidental conversations, then deliberate lunches, then the kind of easy routine that makes you realize you have started looking for one person in every room. He was funny in this quiet, dry way that made me laugh when I was trying not to. He listened all the way through when I talked. He remembered details. When we got married and later had Zoe, our life looked exactly like what both of us had worked for. 2 solid jobs, a home we loved, a daughter who felt secure enough to dance in the kitchen while she did homework. David seemed nothing like chaos. What I didn't understand yet was that his calm had been built in a family where somebody always needed him to steady the table. I saw the family pattern before I had words for it. The first Thanksgiving I spent with David's parents, Chelsea arrived 45 minutes late, empty-handed, with one crying child on her hip and another in socks because she had forgotten shoes. Sharon rushed to her like a medic. Gary took the kids. David stood up before anyone asked and started helping set out extra plates. Later that same night, Chelsea snapped at him because the pie she wanted had pecans in it, and Sharon said, "Be nice to your sister. She's overwhelmed." David apologized even though he had not made the pie and had not said a rude word. That was when I started watching more carefully. Every holiday moved around Chelsea's moods. Every dinner got interrupted by some small emergency. His parents praised David all the time, but never for having boundaries or building a life. They praised him for stepping in, for being reliable, for understanding family duty. Chelsea could miss rent, lose track of paperwork, dump the kids somewhere, and nobody called that irresponsibility. She was trying. David was expected to close the gap. In that house, dependable did not mean respected. It meant available. Once Chelsea had kids, the pattern stopped pretending to be occasional and turned into a system. She would text David on a Friday afternoon with something vague like, "Need a few hours? Can you take the boys?" And by the time he clarified, they were already at our door with overnight bags and snack requests. A few hours became a whole Saturday. An appointment became dinner, bedtime, and me finding one child asleep on our couch with sticky hands because nobody had packed pajamas. On top of that, David was sending Chelsea $1,200 a month, every month, because there was always a reason she was short. School registration, car repair, utility shut-off notice, soccer fees. One month it was a broken water heater. The next month it was, just until I catch up. He also sent extra when things got bad, and somehow things were always just bad enough. I pushed back more than once, usually late at night after the kids were finally gone and our own house looked like a daycare center. I told David I did not mind helping when help was help, but this was not help anymore. This was infrastructure. Chelsea was not surviving random crises. She was organizing her entire life around the assumption that my husband would keep catching her. By the time we started looking for a condo, I had already learned something important. Anything connected to David could turn, in his family's eyes, into family property. Not legally, obviously. Emotionally, morally, in that slippery way people use when they want access to something they did not earn. So when we bought our place, we made a decision together and put it in my name. The mortgage came from our life, our savings, our work. But the title sat with me for a reason. David understood exactly why without needing me to make a speech about it. He had spent too many years hearing versions of the same argument. Chelsea needs more. Chelsea has less. Chelsea is struggling. David can manage. I still remember Sharon's face the first time it became clear to David's family that the condo was legally mine. She recovered fast and called it an interesting choice, which was her phrase for decisions she hated but could not openly attack. After that, the comments got sharper. We were so lucky to have a place like this. We had more than enough room. Chelsea would walk through and say things like, "My kids would love these windows." She said it jokingly the first time. Then she stopped joking. The deed became our quiet line in the sand. Then Chelsea got pregnant again, and suddenly the little comments stopped being hints and became a campaign. Sharon started saying the words "needs more space," like they were medical facts. Gary began talking about square footage at family dinners, like he had appointed himself a housing analyst. Chelsea came over one afternoon, stood in our hallway with one hand on her stomach, and said, "This room would actually fit 2 bunks if you moved the dresser. It's bigger than what we have now." I asked her why she was talking like that, and she gave me a look that was half challenge, half smile. "I'm just saying it makes more sense for a bigger family," she said. David shut it down every time. Not maybe later. Not let's discuss it. Just no. He still sent the money. He still took calls. He still covered last-minute childcare when guilt and panic got stacked together in the same voicemail. But on the condo, he never budged. That was what changed the tone. You could feel it. His parents stopped acting like they were asking for kindness and started acting like they were being denied something owed to them. So when Zoe called me from her room and said, "We're moving," I knew this had not come from nowhere. They had finally decided no meant nothing unless they agreed with it. When I came back outside, David had moved closer to the truck, putting himself between our front door and the rest of them. He was not yelling anymore. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that Sharon looked irritated rather than shocked, which meant she still believed this could be pushed through if she talked long enough. David said very clearly, "Take your things, put them back in the truck, and leave." No extra words. No opening for negotiation. Chelsea made a short sound like a laugh and looked at Sharon, not at him. Gary folded his arms and shifted like a man settling in for an argument he assumed he could outlast. David repeated himself. "Now." Sharon lifted her chin and said, "Don't be ridiculous. We're in the middle of moving Chelsea in." She said it like the process itself had created rights. David didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there and gave them one clean chance to undo what they had done before it got worse. They had spent years benefiting from the fact that he hated mess, hated conflict, hated making scenes. Standing there, they confused restraint with weakness one more time. Then Sharon opened her mouth and said the part they usually dressed up. She said Chelsea had 3 children already, a 4th on the way, and deserved the condo more than we did. Not wanted. Deserved. Gary chimed in that a family our size did not need all this. Chelsea rubbed her stomach and said she was exhausted from climbing stairs in her townhouse and tired of trying to fit kids into shared rooms. I remember every word because it was so naked. Sharon actually said, "You and Lauren can find something smaller. Zoe will adjust." adjust, like my daughter was a piece of furniture that could be shifted to make the layout work better for Chelsea. David asked, "You told my 12-year-old to pack her room?" Sharon answered, "Someone had to tell her. You two were dragging this out." That was when I understood they had not just justified this to themselves. They had rewritten our refusal into unreasonable delay. Chelsea looked toward the front door and said, "I'm not hauling all this back out because you're being dramatic." She said dramatic while her friend was standing beside our mailbox with a laundry basket full of her towels. David's expression changed in a very small way then. It got flatter, colder. They thought they were wearing him down. What they were actually doing was teaching him how final no could sound. He reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and looked directly at Sharon while he unlocked it. Gary gave this little scoff and said, "Oh, stop. Nobody needs theatrics." David never looked away from them. "You were told to leave," he said. "You refused." Then he hit the number and put the phone to his ear. Chelsea's eyes widened first, not because she believed he would go through with it, but because she had never seen him refuse to absorb the cost before. When the dispatcher answered, David's voice stayed even. He gave our address, said 3 people were trespassing in our condo and refusing to leave, and added that one of them had frightened our minor daughter while she was home alone. He did not say family until the dispatcher asked. He just reported facts. Sharon kept trying to interrupt him with, "David, this is absurd," and "Put that away," like he was waving a prop instead of creating a record. Gary muttered that neighbors were staring. Good, I thought. Let them stare. David finished the call, listened, thanked the dispatcher, and ended it. Then he said, "You can walk out now, or officers can walk you out in a few minutes." That was the moment the old family rules died in broad daylight. For one more beat, they still acted like it wasn't real. Sharon actually said, "You can't have your own family removed from your own home." David looked at her, and the corner of his mouth lifted in a smile so small it almost wasn't one. Not warm, not happy, just certain. "The condo is legally Lauren's," he said. "The deed is in Lauren's name." Chelsea's face changed first. The color left it so fast it was almost theatrical, except this time she wasn't performing. Gary blinked and looked from David to me like he was trying to recalculate the whole plan in real time. Sharon didn't look surprised, only cornered. She had known for a long time that the condo was in my name. David kept going in that same calm voice. "It's in her name, not mine. So no, you are not standing here arguing family rights. You are standing at Lauren's front door after telling her daughter to pack." Chelsea's hand dropped from her stomach. For the first time all afternoon, she looked unsure of where to stand. They had built this takeover on one assumption, that David could still be leaned on, guilted, cornered, worn down by history. The second Chelsea and Gary understood the condo was mine, and Sharon realized guilt was no longer going to move us, that illusion collapsed. Suddenly, they weren't a family making demands. They were trespassers waiting for consequences. David didn't stop there because the legal point was not the part he cared about most. He looked at Chelsea and said, "You told my daughter to pack her things." Then he looked at Sharon and Gary. "You all did." Sharon tried to jump in with, "Don't make this about," and he cut right across her. "It is exactly about that." I had never seen him do that to his mother before. Chelsea started crying then, angry tears more than hurt ones, and said she was pregnant, stressed, desperate, and thought family was supposed to help family. David nodded once like he had heard the words and found them empty. "I have been helping you for years," he said. "That ends today." Then he listed it, item by item, in a voice so level it made every word land harder. No more monthly money. No more extra bailouts. No more Saturday babysitting. No more emergency pickups. No more dropping your kids at our door and assuming we'll adjust. Sharon said, "You can't punish an unborn baby because everybody got upset." David answered, "You should have thought about Zoe before you told her she didn't live here anymore." Chelsea stared at him like she had never really met him. Maybe she hadn't. For the first time, his voice had a closed door in it. The officers arrived while Chelsea's friend was sliding backward toward the truck, regretting every decision that had brought her there. The scene got awkward in a hurry, which somehow felt more devastating than if everybody had started screaming. One officer spoke to David by the walkway while the other asked me a few questions at the front door. I told them the condo belonged to me, that these people had entered and started moving belongings in without permission, and that my daughter had been inside alone when they told her to pack and leave her room. David gave the same facts. Sharon tried to soften it into a family misunderstanding, but the officer asked a simple question. "Were you asked to leave?" When she hesitated, that was enough. Chelsea said she was his sister, as if that should matter more than the answer. It didn't. The officers stayed polite, but they still told them they needed to gather their property and go. So they did. Gary carried the box he had brought in. Chelsea's friend took the lamp. Sharon kept muttering about humiliation. I stood in the doorway and watched them walk back toward the truck they had arrived in. When the officers drove off and the building went still again, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. I was calm and I was done. The first beautiful thing after they left was the silence. Not dramatic silence, just normal house silence. The refrigerator humming, a faucet dripping once in the kitchen because somebody hadn't turned it all the way off. Zoe came out of her room slowly, like she still expected somebody to tell her to go back. David went straight to her, knelt down and said, "No one is ever doing that to you again." Then we helped her unpack the things she had folded so carefully. Her jeans went back into drawers. Her books went back on the shelf. The gray hoodie came out of the trash bag and onto the bed, and she laughed a little when I held it up like it had survived a disaster. After dinner, when she was calmer, David opened his laptop at the kitchen table and started ending things. He canceled the automatic transfer that had been hitting Chelsea's account every month. He removed her from the family card he had let her use for kid expenses. Then he sent one short text. "No more money, no more childcare, no more drop-offs. Do not come to our home." He showed it to me before he hit send, and I nodded. He wasn't making threats. He was removing privileges they had mistaken for permanent rights. By the next afternoon, Sharon had decided to take the fight public. She wrote a Facebook post so manipulative I had to read it twice to appreciate the effort. According to her, David had called the police on his pregnant sister during a family housing discussion, humiliated his parents, and chosen his wife over blood. Gary added comments about betrayal and disrespect. Chelsea shared it with a crying selfie and a caption about how some people abandon mothers when they need help most. None of them mentioned Zoe. None of them mentioned the boxes in our entryway. None of them mentioned telling a 12-year-old to clear out her room. And because lies are always easier to absorb than context, some people reacted exactly the way they had hoped. A cousin wrote, "Wow, unbelievable." One of Sharon's church friends commented with prayer hands and heartbreak emojis. Somebody I barely knew messaged David to ask if the post was true. For a few ugly hours, it looked like they might win by being louder. Zoe saw the mood shift before she saw the posts themselves. She asked why my phone kept buzzing and whether Grandma was mad. I told her Grandma had made some choices and we were handling them, but I could feel the second front opening, and so could David. At first he ignored it. He made coffee, answered work emails, and let the notifications pile up. Then around lunchtime, he sat down at the dining table with his phone, read every post once, and said, "I'm not letting them erase Zoe." He didn't write a rant. He wrote 4 calm paragraphs. He said his parents and sister had entered our condo without permission, told his 12-year-old daughter to pack her things, and tried to move Chelsea in while Zoe was home alone and scared. Then he added the numbers they had conveniently left out. For 6 years, he had sent Chelsea $1,200 a month. That was at least $86,400, not including extra bailouts for bills, repairs, school costs, and emergencies. He wrote that he had also provided regular child care, often with no notice, and that none of that support had stopped them from trying to remove his child from her own home. He ended with one line: "If you think calling the police was harsh, ask yourself what you would call telling a 7th grader she doesn't live in her bedroom anymore." He posted it without drama, locked his phone, and went back to work. Once the numbers entered the room, the performance started losing oxygen. The turn came fast. People who had been ready to gasp at pregnant sister got quiet when they realized the story they heard had skipped the child, the condo, and 6 years of money. A cousin deleted his comment and called David to apologize. One of Gary's old friends wrote, "You left out the part about the girl." Sharon's post stopped getting sympathy and started getting questions she could not answer cleanly. Chelsea deleted the crying selfie by dinner. She texted David that he had embarrassed her with private details, and he replied with a screenshot of her public post and nothing else. That was all it took. Even people who still thought family should never involve police seemed to understand one basic fact. Nobody with a decent explanation tells a child to pack first and discusses fairness later. More messages came in after that, but the tone had changed. They weren't asking how David could do this. They were asking what Chelsea had been thinking. The shame Sharon tried to aim at us swung back so hard it almost looked mechanical. She wanted a public trial. What she got was a witness list. And once the story flipped, it never really flipped back. What mattered more to me than the online reversal was what happened after the phones went quiet. We didn't treat the cutoff like a cooling-off period. We treated it like a new operating system. David blocked Chelsea's number after saving screenshots of everything. He muted his parents, then eventually blocked them too when they kept trying new angles: guilt, prayer, family meeting, fake concern about Zoe. We told the front office not to buzz them up if they showed up uninvited. We stopped answering side-channel messages from relatives fishing for compromise. There was no grand announcement, no dramatic final speech, just follow-through. Saturdays opened up in a way they hadn't in years. We ate breakfast slowly. We took Zoe to bookstores. We stopped keeping one corner of our weekends mentally reserved for Chelsea's next emergency. The money stayed in our account. The house stayed peaceful. Most important, Zoe stopped asking whether somebody could make her leave if enough adults agreed. That question faded because the answer had become visible. We had not just won one terrible day. We had ended a pattern that had been draining our marriage, our time, and our daughter's sense of safety. The boundary stopped being emotional the second we enforced it twice. A year later, the condo feels fully ours. Not because the paint changed or the furniture moved, but because peace stopped feeling temporary. Zoe is 13 now, taller, louder, and back to leaving art supplies on the dining table like she owns it, which she should. She doesn't flinch when the buzzer rings anymore. She doesn't ask who is coming before she opens the fridge. David and I still talk about how much energy we were pouring into Chelsea. The monthly money was obvious once it stopped, but the bigger thing was the constant readiness, the mental space, the rearranged weekends, the expectation that our lives could be interrupted because hers always were. Chelsea did have the baby. She also discovered that raising 4 children without David's wallet and free babysitting looks very different from planning a bigger family with somebody else on standby. Sharon and Gary, who spent years insisting families should help, are the ones doing more of the helping now, and from what we hear, it has made their house less peaceful than ours. As for us, we kept the home, the calm, and the line. So do you think my husband did the right thing by cutting them off and calling the police? Or was that too harsh, even after what they did to our daughter? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.